All right, thanks for joining us on Wednesday, Mother Hustler. We will go ahead and jump right into our activities. I'm excited to continue Judgment Detox. I think this is something that everybody can benefit from in all areas of life, and love what we listened to yesterday and excited to continue our reading today. So first, we'll send our birthday messages. Open up Facebook. And we should see our birthdays, either notifications or at the top if you're on your computer. Send those personal messages. Oh, gosh, I don't want to make a post. And if you did miss yesterday, go ahead and go through today, and then you can jump back to yesterday if you have time. All right. Hopefully everybody had some time. I had hardly any birthdays today, so mine was pretty quick.
help support your journey.
Okay.
Let's help support. Step.
All right, we are ready for track 4. I believe we'll be able to do track 4 and track 5. Deja, you have 17 birthdays today? What the heck? I had like 5. It's crazy. Some days I have so many and then so little. 17. Must have been a lot of people born in Florida on this day, but not too many in Missouri. Okay. Starting track 4. Are you ready? Let's do it.
Witness your judgment with step 1. Witness your judgment without judgment. It's the morning of November 9th, 2016. The election results are in, and the nation is divided. The country is polarized and overwhelmed by the divisive campaigning. Both political parties are exhausted by the drama, the negative rhetoric, and the judgment. Half the country is celebrating the results, while the other half is protesting in the streets. It's early in the morning, and I turn on the news. Every station is swamped with political pundits spewing conflicting views. I turn to Facebook only to find nasty, heated debates taking over my feed. I'm saddened by the energy of separation and the attack from both sides. Moments later, I get a text from my publicist saying, "Gab, I've got a ton of online publications that want you to come on today and share your spiritual response to the election and the division between both parties." Without hesitation, I text back, "Yes." After accepting the media request, I come to the realization that I haven't yet found my own spiritual solution to handling the conflict in our country. I take a good look at where I'm at. Deeply disturbed by the negativity I'm witnessing all throughout the country. How can I offer spiritual guidance in the midst of such immense separation? Despite my apprehension, I feel I have no choice but to show up. I have to call on my higher self to shine some light on the darkness. Within the hour, I'm on live stream sharing spiritual guidance on how to respond to the election. The interviewer says, "Gabby, the nation is divided and we need your help. What is the spiritual way to handle this?" Before I respond, I silently pray, "Spirit, please speak through me." Then I start with my truth. I share how overwhelmed I feel by all of it. Then these words pour out of me effortlessly. We must look closely at our shadow and shine light on it. Let's all take a look at our judgment. Let's become aware of the ways that we've judged the president-elect, his team, his family, and his supporters. Let's look at the ways we judged Hillary Clinton and her family and her campaign. Let's get honest about how we've judged our friends, neighbors, and families for their conflicting political views. The first step in healing our feelings of separateness is to witness our judgment without judgment. The one thing we all have in common is our judgment. It's all the same, regardless of which side we're on. The interviewer seemed surprised by my response. She, like many, felt justified in her judgment. "What do I do with my judgment?" she asks. "Just witness it and trust this is the first step toward healing," I say. I explain that in order to truly heal our feelings of judgment, we must begin by healing our minds. We must acknowledge that attacking someone who has attacked us only creates more attack. If we want to free ourselves from this nasty cycle, we have to shine light on the darkness. The way to do this is to witness our judgmental thoughts. When I suggest that we simply witness our judgment and trust in the healing power of this action, I can sense relief in my interviewer's voice and expression. When we let our guard down and witness our judgment with love, even for a moment, we can experience peace. Being the non-judgmental witness of our judgment is the first step in this detox. This is the crux of the work. We have to see clearly the ways in which we separate from love, and we have to get honest about the dark corners of our mind. The crucial part of this practice is to witness our judgment without judgment. The process of witnessing our darkness is a brave and sacred act of love. Being willing to accept the parts of our consciousness that are out of spiritual alignment makes us stronger. When we take an honest inventory of the ways we judge, we can become aware of the root cause of all our suffering, our separation from love. At our core, we are loving, kind, whole, healthy, and compassionate people. But over the course of our lives, we've separated from that love and wholeness. We've become fragmented beings with dark, scary parts. Rage, anger, trauma, and painful memories contribute to the sense of dissociation. We become numb, frozen, and asleep. We shut down the power of our love and innocence in an attempt to protect ourselves from feeling our deepest, most shameful wounds. We've done the best we can to survive, and we've grown to rely on attack and fear the presence of love. In many cases, judgment has been our greatest defense mechanism. We have used it to defend against our vulnerability. We fear that if we let our guard down and act compassionately and lovingly toward one another, that we will be taken advantage of and will no longer feel safe. This is totally understandable given the traumas we've experienced in the past and all the new traumatic events in the world. All we have to do is turn on the news and we're engulfed in the negativity of it all. So day after day, month after month, year after year, we've built up a wall against the presence of love and instead grown to rely on judgment as our protector. Behind the wall of judgment lie our deepest feelings of inadequacy and shame. When we feel separate from others, our shame is triggered. We feel alone, not good enough, unworthy of love and connection. Shame is the most difficult emotion to accept, and we'll do anything to avoid feeling it. We resist it by projecting it onto others through judgment, and then we grow to rely on judgment as a way of finding relief from our wounds. The first step in healing our shame and letting down our guard is to accept that we are not the victim of the world we see. By witnessing our judgment with love and compassion for ourselves, we can see how our wounded side is trying to protect us from feeling shame. But this is a false protection. The more conscious we become of how we use judgment to play it safe, the more we realize how unsafe it really is. We can see how judgment breeds more judgment. When we attempt to protect ourselves with judgment, we create more separation and deepen our disconnection from love. Love can seem far scarier to us than fear. We're terrified to let love in because we fear that when we do, we'll be susceptible to more pain. But love is the antidote to judgment. Love heals it all. When we witness our judgment with love, we can see ourselves as innocent children. We can see our wounds and begin to understand why we judged in the first place. If you have been abused as a child, of course you would judge the world around you because you don't feel safe. If you have been left by a lover, it's inevitable that you judge all future relationships to protect yourself from being hurt again. If you felt bullied or attacked, of course you would attack back to try to save yourself from pain and suffering. Today in my country, following our presidential election, I'm witnessing millions of people's childhood wounds triggered beyond all measure. They feel left behind and ignored. They feel bullied. They feel sexually assaulted. They feel like targets of bigotry. Their wounds have been ripped open, and their instinct to protect themselves has kicked in with fierceness. I honor their feelings. At the same time, I witness their wounds. I can see clearly how their judgment is a defense mechanism. I can also see how we all hold so tightly to our own defenses. To release our judgments of one another would be to take off our armor and end the fight. Traumatized people cannot let their guard down. But what would happen if everyone raging on every side took a moment to witness their judgment? They'd realize that at its core, their judgment was no different from anyone else's. Their fear is the same. Their wound is the same. We are all wounded. We are all innocent children who became deeply traumatized. We are afraid of love and we use judgment to protect ourselves. In many cases, separation and judgment represent the only way we could survive. Honoring the ways we've stayed safe is a huge step. Our judgment of others has protected us from facing our wounds. To avoid feeling our wounds, we've built up pretenses around ourselves. We mask our wounds underneath our clothes, in our relationships, and behind our social and economic status. The perceptions we've built up around ourselves are like blinding lights we shine to distract from the shadows within. We rely on them because without them, our vulnerability would be exposed. We put enormous effort into hiding our vulnerability, but it's our vulnerability that truly heals. When we feel safe enough to expose our shadows, that's when we become free. We don't have to protect our shadows any longer. We can begin to dismantle the wall that separates us from real, authentic, fearless love. By witnessing our judgment, we take down the first brick in the wall and peek at what's behind it, our shame, fear, and feelings of separation. Uncovering our true feelings helps us understand our triggers and honor our wounds so that we can work through them. When we witness our judgment, we accept that it was merely a defense against our wounds. This brings us to the first step in the judgment detox. Witness your judgment without judgment. This is a beautiful practice. What is asked is that you become more conscious of the ways you separate yourself from others and the world. This step requires an honest inventory of your thoughts, words, and actions. When you look closely at the ways you judge, you may be tempted to judge yourself. Let's take that off the table now by accepting that we all judge all the time. We live in a world filled with judgment, and no one is a saint. Therefore, let's accept that we're all in it together. I know that makes me feel better. Whenever I judge myself for judging, I try to remember that I'm not alone. I remember that judgment is a pervasive addiction. When I witness my judgment without judgment, I can be proud of my willingness to heal and grow. I can applaud myself for stepping out of the darkness and turning on the light. I honor myself for the traumas that led me to be so defensive in the first place. After all, why would I feel the need to judge if I felt safe and complete? It's the dark beliefs within me that lead me to judge. I use judgment to take the focus off my own feelings of inadequacy, and I project those feelings onto someone else to feel relief. But instead of bringing me the relief I desire, projecting my judgment onto others severs my connection with my truth. After the projection, I'm left feeling disconnected, fearful, and alone. I feel separate from others and unsafe in my perception of the world. The aftermath of judgment is a dark and scary place that offers me no relief. Real relief comes when I'm brave enough to witness the judgment and call it by its name, fear. The root cause of all judgment is the fear of not being good enough, not being worthy of love, and not being safe. When we become brave enough to look at the judgment and fear, we can begin to heal. I've made a major commitment as a spiritual teacher to show up for the world with love and grace. This doesn't come easily to me. I often feel wounded, offended, and defensive. But in order to show up for my readers and for myself, I've become a master at witnessing my judgment. This step in the judgment detox is the most crucial of the practice. Without your honesty and willingness to look at the darkness, you can never step into the light. Take the first step into the light. The spiritual teacher and author Eckhart Tolle says, the moment you become aware of the ego in you, it is strictly speaking no longer the ego, but just an old, conditioned mind pattern. Ego implies unawareness. Awareness and ego cannot coexist. The first step in the judgment detox is a process of becoming aware of the dark shadows in your mind. When you become aware of your darkness, a profound shift occurs, and you no longer have to run from fear. When you expose your fear to the light, suddenly there's nothing to run from. You can see the fear as something outside of you, something you no longer need to identify with. You can witness the fear and judgment as an addictive pattern rather than a personal trait. Witnessing strips fear and judgment of their power and liberates you. As you can probably guess, being present with your fear can feel terrifying. You may be afraid of exposing your darkness because you're scared of what may be lurking below the surface. That's why the judgment detox is a step-by-step process. You won't expose the darkness to the light all at once. You begin by witnessing what's present right now, so that bit by bit, piece by piece, you can become more and more aware. This process is meant to be taken slowly so that you can truly witness your judgmental patterns. All that's required now is your willingness to begin the journey of healing your mind so you can be free. Are you willing to look at your judgment and bring awareness to it? I trust the answer is yes. Without your willingness, you wouldn't have picked up this book. Your desire to be free, happy, and connected is what led you here. So let's call on that willingness with a prayer and allow you to look at your judgment without fear or self-attack. Prayer is a key element to your spiritual healing. When you pray, you offer up your fearful beliefs to the care of your loving inner guidance system. A prayer can disconnect you from the habit of fear and judgment so that you can open up your consciousness to hear the voice of love. This prayer will help you surrender to the spiritual steps laid before you. Allow it to guide you to commit to your desire to be free and begin step 1. Let's pray. I thank my higher self, the voice of love and wisdom within me. Thank you for granting me the willingness to open this book and begin this journey. I am willing to be free. I am willing to be happy. I am willing to witness my judgment without judgment. Now that you're energetically prepared to look at your judgment, take out your notebook and pen. At the top of the page, write this: I am willing to witness my judgment without judgment. Then make 4 columns down the page. If you want to follow this practice with the Judgment Detox journal, the columns will be laid out for you. To access the journal, visit gabbybernstein.com/book resources. Column 1, what or whom am I judging? Column 2, how does this judgment make me feel? Column 3, why do I feel justified in this judgment? Column 4, what moment in my life triggered me to feel justified in this judgment? Here are 2 examples of how to use the 4-column process. Column 1, what or whom am I judging? I'm judging know-it-all academics for thinking they're better than everyone else. Column 2, how does this judgment make me feel? It makes me feel good at first because I feel like I'm protecting myself from people who think they are better than me. But when I sit with my feelings, I feel separate and alone. Column 3, why do I feel justified in this judgment? Because academics are know-it-alls and they think they're better than anyone who doesn't have their vocabulary and knowledge. Column 4, what moment in my life triggered me to feel justified in this judgment? When I was in 6th grade, the smart, popular boy I had a crush on told me I was stupid. Example 2, column 1, what or whom am I judging? I judge my best friend for dating guys who are not good for her. Column 2, how does this judgment make me feel? I feel justified at first, but quickly that turns into sadness and even jealousy. Column 3, why do I feel justified in this judgment? I think she's better than the guys she dates. She deserves more. Column 4, what moment in my life triggered me to feel justified in this judgment? This judgment is triggered by the fact that I don't choose guys that are good for me. In fact, I don't even date because I'm too afraid to be hurt. This all stems from the traumatic breakup I had last year. Begin with column 1. List whatever comes to mind. Don't edit yourself at all. Just write out every judgment that comes up. Try to make a list of at least 15 judgments, sticking only to column 1 for each. You can start with a minor judgment if it feels too scary to throw out the big ones first. Maybe you judged a stranger in line at the grocery store because of what she was wearing. Maybe you judged a Facebook friend for one of her posts. There are many small judgments we make throughout the day. The more you allow yourself to become aware of them, the more obvious they will be. Don't discredit the seemingly minor judgments because you may discover a bigger pattern at work. Once you've written out 15 judgments, take a moment to review the list without editing it. You may find that some of the judgments you recorded don't feel very heightened for you at this time. Keep them on the list nonetheless. Trust that whatever you put on the page is exposing something to you. Even if it seems like a minor judgment, there's something underneath it that needs to be exposed. Trust completely in what you've written. Once you've documented at least 15 judgments, move on to column 2. This is where you get honest about how judgment makes you feel. We don't often take a step back from our attack thoughts and check in with the feelings underneath them. In fact, this may be the first time you've even considered it. I understand that this might feel pretty uncomfortable and foreign, but please don't skip this step. It's crucial that you become intimate with the feelings behind your judgment. Those feelings will help inform what's to come next. Go down the list of judgments and describe in great detail how each one makes you feel. Be very descriptive. Maybe you feel like you're choking, or that judgment makes you feel like you want to punch a wall. Or maybe the judgment makes you feel justified, empowered, and fierce. I recommend that you go as far as describing how it feels in your body. Where do you hold this judgment in your physical being? Does the judgment have a color or a shape? Does it cause you physical tension or pain? Does it make your skin tingle or your chest tighten? Vividly describe how the judgment makes you feel. When you've completed column 2, fill in column 3. Take time to write out all the reasons you feel justified in your judgment. Do not judge your justification or feel guilty about or ashamed of your thoughts. Rather, give yourself permission to get it out onto the page. Honor it. This is a process of stripping away years of behavior, so be fearless and brave. Once you've finished column 3, move on to column 4. Column 4 is an opportunity to use free writing to uncover your past experiences. This is a very powerful and possibly uncomfortable step. Take it slow and trust you're being guided. Begin by listing all the possible triggers, past wounds, or traumatic events that may be the cause of the judgment noted in column 1. Some of these might be crystal clear. For instance, maybe you judge your boss for the way he treats you, which makes you feel weak and powerless. Then by the time you hit column 4, it becomes clear to you that this judgment and pain represents an old memory of being reprimanded by your dad. Your anger toward your dad has caused you to have major authority issues. These fears around authority figures have led you to judge and attack in order to feel safe. While some of your judgments, like this example, might be pretty easy to unpack, there are likely to be others that you'll resist. Let's call out resistance right now. When your ego feels threatened or in any way afraid of unraveling an old grievance or traumatic wound, you will shut down. You'll go numb and you may even fall asleep. When I began to heal my own judgment, some traumatic memories surfaced for me. Each time I'd try to recall any memories or reasons for my grievance, I'd literally start yawning and fall asleep. This was my brain's way of protecting me from moving too quickly into the uncomfortable feelings and memories. I tell you this because if you find yourself shutting down or feeling exhausted, frustrated, annoyed, or dismissive, it's okay to return to column 4 at a later time. If you can get through only columns 1 through 3 for now, that's fine. You will revisit column 4 when you feel safer. And if this work triggers you in any way, you can also seek professional counseling or access one of our trauma resources I offer at gabbybernstein.com/book resources. Give yourself the time you need to complete all 4 columns. Once you complete them, take some time to reflect on what you've uncovered. Answer the following questions in your journal. Are there any patterns in your judgment? Did anything you uncovered surprise you? How does it make you feel to witness your judgment? Did you judge yourself for your own judgment? Did it bring you relief to look at the judgment? Did it make you uncomfortable to look at the judgment? Let your pen flow as you answer each question in your journal. Don't edit anything. Once you've completed each answer, write down anything else that came up for you. Take a close look at what this exercise ignited in you and honor your work. Throughout this detox, continue to fill in the 4 columns. Make it part of your daily practice. Each morning when you wake up, check in and see if you have any new judgments that you want to witness. I find that if I watch the news or even scroll through Twitter before bed, I'm likely to wake up really judgmental. This practice helps me cleanse that judgment before I begin my day. Practicing this step first thing in the morning can have a major impact on your day. Upon waking, take a few minutes to fill in the 4-step chart. When you put pen to paper and witness your judgment, it's like throwing open the curtains to your mind and letting the sun pour in. Instead of unconsciously carrying the judgment with you throughout the day, you're shining light on it. The simple act of looking at your judgment can help you begin to feel less attached to it and can set you up to win for the rest of the day. Throughout the day, you're going to continue to judge, as we all do. But now you'll be aware of it, and you'll be amazed by how judgmental you really are. So pay close attention to your judgmental thoughts, words, and actions throughout the day. Maybe jot them down in your journal so that you can revisit them later. Try your best to stay committed to the practice of conscious awareness. Remember, the more you look at your judgment, the less attached to it you will be. Witnessing your judgment takes away its power. Before bed, revisit the 4 columns and add any new judgments that came up during the day. Each morning and night, take time to pay close attention to the judgments that come through. You may find that you have 1 or 2 judgments on repeat. You might discover that when one judgment gets resolved, you pick up another to obsess over. Or maybe the same judgment you woke up with is still lingering before you go to sleep. Simply witness your judgment without judgment and take notes in your journal. Continue to pay attention to the patterns and stories that surface. Throughout this step, keep your focus on your own healing and off other people's behavior. As you look more closely at your judgments, you'll be tempted to fixate on all the ways other people are disappointing you and the reasons they should change. Do your best to let them off the hook. Put the grievance on the shelf and place your focus instead on your own healing. Your ego will continually tempt you to project your discomfort onto others. Just lovingly witness the ego's tricks and do your best not to act on them. And when you do, because you will, simply add the new judgment to your list and continue with the practice. Don't worry about how to handle other people. We'll get to that in later steps. For now, focus on your own judgmental habits and let everyone else do their thing. Celebrate the miracle moments. The first step in the Judgment Detox will help you become aware of the ways in which judgment wreaks havoc in your subconscious mind. You must become intimately aware of your judgmental patterns in order to heal them. The more mindful you are of how you judge, the easier the following steps will be. Honor yourself for being willing to look at this behavior. Create a section in your journal to celebrate the miracle moments. A miracle moment can be as simple as having the willingness to witness your judgment throughout the day. It can be the recognition that you no longer believe in a judgmental thought. Maybe the miracle is that the judgmental thought troubling you in the morning was gone when you reviewed your notes in the evening. Document your progress throughout the book, and begin now by acknowledging your willingness to look at your judgment even when it's uncomfortable. The more consciously aware you become of how judgment shows up in your life, the more willing you will be to continue on this path. You can't heal your perceptions if you're unwilling to look at them. 5 days after the 2016 election, I gave a talk at a spiritual expo. The title of my talk was The Universe Has Your Back, based on the lessons from my last book. I got on the stage and opened with a very bold remark. I said, "Given the state we are in, I feel called to change the direction of my talk. I can't stand here today and ignore the division, separation, and judgment that is plaguing our country. I have to speak up. This is not a talk on politics. This is a talk on oneness. This is a time for us to witness our judgment without judgment." While I didn't give a political talk, the timing was such that politics was on everyone's mind. Among the hundreds of people in the room, there were many strongly held and divergent political viewpoints. Nevertheless, I spent 2 hours teaching lessons on how we dissolve all boundaries with love, release separation, and show up with more light. I knew that changing the topic of my talk might upset some people, but in the midst of the palpable turmoil, I felt the need to offer guidance, wisdom, and solutions. I did my best to honor both sides of the conversation and bring the conversation back to love and healing. During the question and answer period, a young woman got up and shared about her devastation over the election results. She said, "What upsets me most is how much hate and anger I'm seeing online. People are judging one another for their views. I just want to bring more love to the conversation. What do I do?" I replied, post that. Call out the judgment. Shine light on it by pointing it out. Witness your judgment publicly and share that you want to bring more love to the conversation. She felt empowered by the idea that she didn't have to do anything other than acknowledge her own judgment and get honest. She accepted that by telling the truth, she could be set free. The talk came to an end, and I asked the audience if anyone in the room had a burning desire. Another young woman raised her hand. She said, Gabby, at the beginning of this talk, I almost walked out. I was terrified that you were going to push your political views onto us. I voted for Trump. I am a woman. I survived 3 rapes, and I've had a lot of odds stacked against me. But with all that, I've chosen to get behind a man who I believe will bring the change I want. I'm standing here proud to say that. The room was silent. I looked at the audience and said, let's honor her for her choice and commend her for her bravery to speak up. Then an audience of strangers, the majority of whom likely disagreed with her political views, got up and honored her for her decision with a standing ovation. In that moment, the group dissolved their boundaries with love. Having spent 2 hours in prayer, meditation, and communication with God, they'd look closely at their fear and judgment, and they chose again. They chose to take judgment off the altar and replace it with love. I accepted that the direction of my talk may have triggered some people, and I took full responsibility for that. But I was called to speak up about the division and separation we were suffering from. This is a time for oneness, and it is my mission to spread that message in whatever way I can. That's what I believe you're here for. You open this book because your higher self is guiding you to show up in a greater way, to be more kind, more compassionate, and more loving. The clearest way to find joy and success is to join your mind with love. Love can dissolve all boundaries, separation, war, and attack. When one person chooses love, it's felt throughout the world. Your commitment to this practice matters. It's time to witness your judgment and choose again. Witnessing your judgment is an act of self-love and a major step toward healing. Your willingness to lovingly look at your judgment has prepared you for the next step, which is to honor your wounds. When you become brave enough to look at your fragmented psyche, it becomes easier to honor the wounds. In the coming step, you will be guided to look more closely at the wounds that live beneath your judgmental nature. Trust that your willingness to witness your judgment without judgment has prepared you. As you move into the next step, continue to call on step 1 for help. Remain the non-judgmental witness of your judgment and trust in the next right action.
Okay, that was it for today. That got us through track 4 and track 5. I'm kind of glad that we read Super Attractor first, because in that book, she really put an emphasis on love, and that love opens us up to new opportunities and success in our lives. And so I think this is a great follow-up book, just to show us that judgment is the polar opposite of love. So when we're in a state of judgment, we aren't mentally open. Our minds are not mentally open for success. That comes from a state of love. And I think that the time that we're in right now, with another election coming up, is such a great time to read this book. Like, what are the odds that that's all over our TV, these last couple weeks, and then now we open up this book and she's talking about it, and I've never read this book, so I had no idea that this chapter was coming. But I feel like it's such great timing just to turn to love in places where we can feel so divided. And I think that's a cool thing about our company as well, is that we can all come together for a greater good of helping other people and improving our health together. That's something that I think everybody can agree on. And so just keep an open mind all the time. And I'm always a work in progress with this as well. So we're all taking steps together to open our minds, turn towards love, and ultimately have success right where we're at. So, okay, we have like 10 minutes until the Paul call starts, and I want everybody to have the opportunity to hop on that. So let's move into our stories quickly. Let's take about 5 minutes to work on our stories. And I would talk about double triple, which I will go live after, probably right after Paul's call, to talk about triple commission. But that's something good to start showcasing on your story right now, because people can get more product than they typically would for a lesser price than they would typically pay for a 400 pack. Kind of talking about the rebates coming. I know not everybody's familiar with this promo, so I'm gonna go ahead and let myself explain it on the team page first. Feel free to ask questions there, and then we can recap on here tomorrow and talk about triple commission a little bit more, answer whatever questions you have, but I'll explain it to everybody first and give you a chance to post on your story about that. I would go ahead and just talk about Thrive in some way this morning first, either Thrive Nutrition, Thrive Skin, talk about that first. And then obviously with the 400 pack, they can even get a combo of Thrive Nutrition and Thrive Skin in those packs now. So that's something that we can talk about. So I will give everybody a couple minutes to work on it. Okay, girls, I will go ahead and let you jump on Paul's call. I would definitely suggest letting it play while you're doing whatever you need to do at home, because Paul's calls are so great and so motivating. And sounds like he has a couple of announcements as far as weekly promos for all promoters. So definitely go check out the post and get the info to dial in. I'm going to dial in right now. I keep the Lavelle leadership line in my phone just under Lavelle leadership. That way I know exactly it's the same line that Paul uses all the time for his calls and for corporate calls. So I leave it as a contact in my phone, and I'm going to dial in right now. But yes, let's slay the day and do what we need to do for earning our triple commission by next week. So I will hop off and I'll see you guys tomorrow. We'll talk more about triple commission tomorrow, but I'll go live on our team page today and talk about it. So see you on Pulse Call. Bye, guys. Happy Wednesday. Thanks for joining.